Mobile game developers no longer need to pay up to 30% in major App Store fees. With Xsola Web Shop, you can create a direct storefront, cut fees down to as low as 5%, and keep players engaged with bundles, rewards, and analytics. Start today at xsola.com. That's XSOLLA.com. Or use the link in the episode show notes.
The problem is that the distinction needs to be drawn between the competence of the economists and the correctness of their analysis.
Hello and welcome to the Mobile Dev Memo podcast. I'm your host, Eric Seufert, and I'm joined today by Julian Togelius. Julian, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thank you, Eric. Good to be here.
It's great to have you. So I know you through having the great pleasure of working alongside you at Unity, where we are both on the AI Council. But you also do a number of other things, a very sort of prestigious CV. So I'll let you kind of introduce yourself to the audience before we dive into the conversation.
Awesome. Yeah. I'm a professor at NYU, and I also have a habit of coming up with startups. So basically, my main research is artificial intelligence for games and games for artificial intelligence. So how do you make games better with AI, and how do you use games to test AI, develop better AI? And when I say games, I mean anything that people play, not so much like traditional board games, but more like, StarCraft, Minecraft, Anycraft, Super Mario Bros, Doom, etc., and poker and so on. And then I founded a game testing company called Model AI, MODL.ai. And recently I've joined as head of AI another startup called N of One, where we're building AI for finance. And do I know anything about finance? No. But, it's just another game, isn't it? And by way of background, I'm from Sweden originally, but I have been living in a bunch of places, Switzerland, England, and so on. An academic career tends to take you to places, some more interesting than others.
Yeah, so I actually had Christopher Holmgaard on the podcast in October 2024. So he's the CEO of Modal. So it's great to have you. It was tough to kind of come up with the questions because I think there's just so many interesting directions that we could take this conversation. I think just given our sort of, mutual interest in games, that's probably the most logical place to start. So maybe just as a big picture kind of question to set the tone for the conversation, what makes games a particularly rich area of research for AI? Why start there? Why focus there?
Games are fun, and that seems like a sort of inane thing to say, you're just working with games because it's fun, not because it's fun stuff. But I think it's kind of something very deep about games being fun. What does fun mean? I mean, fun is a very underdefined concept that we all can use it from time to time. And basically, it means that something is interesting. It means that something engages our minds in a very particular thing. There is a famous theory which comes in different guises. In game design, it's popularized by Ralph Koster, who is a designer of a bunch of different well-known games. Star Wars Online is maybe the most famous. And it comes from developmental psychology, like Piaget and Vygotsky and so on, where you look at like the zones of proximal development, and it comes from machine learning. So my former postdoc advisor, Jürgen Schwitthuber. And it basically converges on that things are fun. Games and other activities are fun because we learn as we go about them. After they push our limits, they put us in a zone of proximal development. They force us to learn what's coming next. And a well-designed game is an extremely well-designed machine for pedagogics, essentially, for teaching it itself. It's not all there is to game. There are many other things to game. There's also this thing that like most games, almost all of them, are an abstraction of some interesting real-life activity. So, chess is about battles, and Tetris is about, stacking things. SimCity is about building cities. Super Mario Bros. Is about playing on a playground, essentially. I was thinking about this the other day when my son who is a big Super Mario Bros. Fan, was like jumping into like a cover cheat on a playground. And it's just like, I'm going into the pipe. Let's see where I come out. He's like, oh yeah, right. This really is a playground. This is a platform game, or this playground is a platform game. So there are many good reasons why games are so interesting to study and to study AI with. And this has been recognized for a very long time. But for a very long time, the only games that were like kind of kosher to work with AI were like boring stuff like chess and checkers and Go. I mean, I'm sorry. Apologies if you love chess and Go and so on. It's great, but it's not my interest. And basically, there's so much more to games. So you saw after AlphaGo, which is now 10 years ago, there are people saying that, okay, now we're done with games. We beat the games. Now we can go on to more interesting stuff. And I'm like, wait, we're just getting started. And we're still just getting started because there's so many different games and there's so many different challenges and so many different things. Like basically chess and checkers and Go and stuff, they're all like, zero-sum, discrete, perfect information games with relatively few terms, relatively low branching factor, etc. And really not very indicative at all about all these fascinating video games that are out there. Or the other thing is like, it's not just about playing games. And it's not just about playing games well to win them. It's also about playing games in the style of a particular player, generating game content, generating complete games, understanding players, and so on.
So Raph Koster is someone that I look up to a lot. So I actually saw him speak once at an event in Helsinki. But his book, A Theory of Fun, is, I think, kind of a must-read for anybody that works in gaming. And it's interesting. I mean, so you said that you think Star Wars is the most famous of his games. I think it's Ultima Online.
Oh, yeah. Right.
But what's interesting about those, these MMORPGs, is that concept is a fundamental deviation from like a platform game like Mario, right? Like, so you think about like computer, like interactive, video games, there were maybe sets of paths that you could take, but there was an endpoint, right? And you would beat it, right? You'd beat a game, right? Mm-hmm. And when you got to MMORPGs, there's no beating it, right? I mean, there's like this living society that persists. And, the incentive structure was different. A lot of it was like social, right? There, different ways of like, there's essentially like no score, right? Like maybe different ways you could consider like a score in terms of like the stats of your character, right? Or the amount of money you had, or the size, like in Ultima Online, you could have a house, right? And like, you could have a castle. And the thing is like, maybe that's a way of keeping score in some sense or comparing yourself against other people, but there was no sort of singular, kind of quantitative benchmark.
But isn't this the case? Isn't this the case for like many other games as well? Like, so my son who turns 4 in 2 weeks. So my son and I play Super Mario Wonder and we beat, and it's great. It's great Nintendo design. We play this together and it's like, they're so good at designing for like, asymmetric co-op basically. And we beat the game, we kicked Bowser out of the castle. But that's just really the beginning of it. Like, even though it is in a sense as traditional a game as it gets, there's so many things you can set yourself. There's so many goals to set, like, and sometimes my son wants to replay various levels with no particular reason, just like, we're inventing new things of like, carrying each other around and so on. There's so many kind of like, there's so much game invention that goes on inside the gameplay, right?
No, yes, that's my point. That's kind of where I was getting at. Sorry, I ended up getting caught in a whirlpool there. But like, so Raph Koster, I mean, with MMORPGs, and that's part of what he talks about in the theory of fun. It's like a game is not some one defined thing. Especially like interactive video games, right? Like there's not one template for it. Like, and really, what you're trying to do is you're trying to materialize the primitive is fun. That's the whole theory of fun. Like, how can we define that in some way where we could apply it in all these different settings that may or may not look like what you would consider to be a game? And certainly like in many MMORPGs, I've spent a lot of times like being mad, right? Like it just gets frustrated right, and irritated. Yeah. And so like, how does that factor in? It's just so like now you think about like, okay, well now it's this is a much more abstract idea, right? Like you could teach an AI, like there's probably like an AI agent that could like beat the original Super Mario Brothers and like speed run it and beat it very quickly, right? Like that's not really a great use case of AI, right? I think like the more sort of applicable and like helpful and valuable use case is probably summoning that primitive of fun and allowing it to sort of explore that. Is that maybe a topic of research, or how do you think about that?
Oh yeah, definitely. So Super Mario Bros. Is kind of funny because it's an ubiquitous kind of model organism in game AI research, partly because of like Notch, the original creator of Minecraft, Marcus. Before Minecraft, he did this little Java-based version of Super Mario Bros. Called Mario Bros. And me and one of my students, that's back in my postdoc days, turned this into an AI competition, and that's basically been proliferating all over. Like basically, it was back in 2009, and it's also funny. Like could you make an agent that just wins and plays perfectly at Super Mario Bros? Well, it depends. It's like I can turn on academic mode. Well, it depends on what kind of inputs you give the agent. Do you give it a simulator? If you have a simulator, yeah, obviously, an 8-star agent can do extremely well and so on. And if you don't have that, it depends on, is it like levels you've seen before or levels you've not seen before and so on. Unseen levels, perfect play on unseen levels is perhaps surprisingly, we're not there at all. We're not even not there. We don't even have an agent that can reliably win unseen levels in the absence of a simulator. Perhaps surprising. And this is a game that's been studied to death. There's just like insane amounts of it. But a lot of work with that is the model organism. I'm using model organism in the same way as you talk about fruit flies in genetics, or like this little snail with 608 neurons or whatever in neuroscience. And it's basically, people study Super Mario Bros. Because it's easy to work with and very understandable. And there's a lot of work in level generation and generating levels that bring out various types of challenge, that would incentivize various kinds of fun, that would allow for as many different play styles as possible, and so on. A lot of the research is not really about playing the game. It's about measuring interesting aspects of a player's play, generating new content, generating new variations, and using AI for that.
Yeah, and you said something really interesting about, so it's on your website too, like about what is the connection that you have to finance? Well, it's the stock market is a game, right? Essentially, like it's, there's obviously like real life consequences there. But talk to me about that, because do you think that is like a motivate? Like, is that a fundamental motivation for people that just do, like, think about like high frequency trading, right? Like Jane Street or jump trading or HRT. I'd have to imagine that a lot of people go to those firms because it's just an easy way to say you're the best, right? Like a lot of these people did Math.io. They're probably, a lot of the people at the competitive firms, the competing firms, are people they know that competed against in Math.io. And, if you implement an algorithm or you just have a better year than somebody else, you beat them. Like, I have to imagine that's part of the motivation for some people to do it, other than just the money.
Yeah, definitely. Lots of people go into quantitative finance and other types of finance because they just like the competition. They treat it as a game. But then again, on another level, the agents that you use for trading, because there's a lot of agentic trading going on, even before LLMs, of course, there are a lot of agentic trading, a lot of little snippets of code that execute, buy and sell and hold actions all the time. I mean, that's how the kind of like cyberspace Wall Street kind of thing works, right? And they are game-playing agents. They are basically little agents acting in reinforcement learning environments and learning to get better. The issue here, the problem here, is that the game is changing all the time. So basically, you have the non-stationarity of the markets. The market conditions are different today than they were yesterday, and the policy you had yesterday that made you money may actually be counterproductive today. And how are you going to adapt to that? You can do it in many different ways. And one way you can look at it is that, like, it's not the local thing, it's like the whole kind of thing. Everything you can observe in the world and all the actions you could take. You could short Bitcoin, buy Volvo, and, keep your something else like options on something weird, South African gold or whatever. But the action space and the observation space for this problem is like humongous. It's enormous. You cannot play that game. You don't have anything near the amount of data you need to learn a policy for that game.
Yeah.
Where do you go from there? What everybody does is they go the other way, basically. They try to find very limited little sub-games, and they try to find the sub-games of like, this kind of option today based on these kind of inputs. We can learn this and then we keep retraining it. And that's why the financial industry tends to work with very small models. So people who come from machine learning and go into finance, especially the people who come from deep learning and go into finance, they tend to be a little bit shocked. Like, what are you doing? Why are you still having linear models and logistical regression and decision trees and stuff like this? And like the finance people will look at you like, it works.
Yeah.
We and we can retrain it extremely fast. So what's the connection to games here? The connection to games is in generality. I said before that, there's actually not an agent that can play on Super Mario Bros. Levels, proficiently in the absence of a good simulator. And this is surprising. And if you take it one step further and you wanted to have an agent that can play any 2D platformer game in the style of Super Mario Bros., We definitely don't have that, not even close. I mean, the problem of general gameplay is not like, it's not only not solved, it's like we barely have any progress on it. Some people will take issue with a statement, and I will say that I actually know better. But it is surprisingly hard. And general gameplay is like general finance. And that's why people focus on playing one game, like Go or Super Mario Bros. Or like, trading one type of option and one type of horizon or something like this.
Yeah.
Because they can learn something.
Let's get real. Half the time, you're not sure if your campaigns work. You just kind of hope they do. Attribution numbers look good, but what if those conversions would have happened anyway? Incremental helps you find out for real. No tracking people, no guessing games. Just clear answers on which campaigns actually move the needle. If you want to stop guessing and start knowing, go to Incremental. Because good marketing isn't about getting clicks, it's about getting results. Check them out at incremental.com. That's INCRMNTAL.com. Or click the link in the show description. I want to talk about like generative tools for game production, right? So you've done a lot of research there. And is the gaming industry fighting an uphill battle in terms of consumer sentiment around the use of AI in development? So, right, like I have the Crimson Desert experience in my mind, right? There was this, and I mean, I think this is kind of like a Redditor, a backlash. I don't know if this is like a general public backlash, but these on Reddit, people were upset. These obvious like placeholder graphics that were made by AI were shipped in the game. And how does the gaming industry position the use of AI as a benefit for consumers? How do they make the case that, look, you're better off if it costs us less, we can create more with the same budget. You're going to get more content. You're going to get more games as a result of these tools. How do they make that case, or is it just too late? I mean, we've just missed the boat on that.
No, I find this super fascinating. Most game developers are just staying away from it. We're running this game AI summer school every year since 2018. This year is going to be June 15 to 19 in Leiden. And we think it's a lot of fun doing this. It's me and a colleague of mine, Jorgos. And we invite people doing AI from within the games industry in a bunch of different roles and a bunch of different companies. And weirdly enough, it's actually become harder to get the speakers we really want. I mean, we have a great lineup this year because we worked a lot on it, but a lot of people said no because they don't want to be associated with AI. Like, maybe not them personally, but their companies. They're basically, nope, we cannot go out. This game studio, cannot go out to an AI conference. What if our players find out? Which I think is super fascinating. I don't know where this is going. If we're going to get into an even more polarized environment, everything is polarized these days, right? And the AI debate is like polarized in a very, very unproductive way. There's a certain kind of boosters that are like, agentic, everything is the future of everything. And, please outsource your brain to Claude as soon as you can. And then there's like, this kind of like Luddites that are like, I won't touch generative AI with a poem. And these are very unproductive positions, both of them, right? It's like there are real issues. And I think the games industry as a whole is just staying away from it. They're just trying not to mention it. I don't know. Do you see it differently, or?
No, I do see it that way, which I think is unfortunate.
Sad. Yeah. I'd like to think about there is AI in game dev, and there are things that are like, yeah. I mean, no one wanted GTA 6 to take how many years to develop? Right. Some kind of crazy stuff. Clearly, there are things that could be made more efficient, right? But then there's also all the things that AI can make possible in terms of new game experiences, new things that we couldn't build otherwise, like AI of various kinds inside the game, from non-player characters to environment generation to like player adaptation and a lot of fascinating stuff. And I fear, because that's one of my main interests really, and I fear that's going to get caught up basically. People are going to sort of not want to experiment with this because it looks bad.
Or just that it gets leaked that they used it and there's some kind of moral panic about it, which is so bizarre to me because, I mean, look, if you want indies to make commercially successful games that reach your phone or reach your, PlayStation or whatever. I mean, what better pathway to that than these AI tools? I mean, like, it's such a net good. I don't even really understand what the perceived downside is from the gamer's perspective, other than they think that they're just getting like a kind of algorithmically generated experience versus something that was like, handcrafted and artisanal, which but I don't think anybody is intending to use AI for that purpose, right? And that was the weird thing to me about the Crimson Desert episode. It was like textures, right? Like, is that an issue? Like that the textures were made by AI? Does that really matter?
No, it's kind of silly. I don't know. I tend to think of it as like what people feel. There's a lot of people's reactions to AI in society that's kind of proxies. People dislike generative AI in general, and they fear that it's like taking over things that they were good at doing, things they enjoy doing. And I mean, I can relate. I think I'm a good writer. I like writing. I do not like that the models are so good at writing. I mean, this is my personal opinion. But people see this and they kind of perceive that, okay, this is nothing I can do anything about. And then they get angry at like data center build-outs that take the, like basically that soak up the electric power, or they get angry at textures generated in some game. It's like, it's a proxy anger, I think.
Right.
It's also true that I don't like reading something. If someone sends me some AI generated piece of text, I get slightly angry at them. Like, why do I have to read this if you didn't write it? And it's a bit like, I'm playing this level in this game I paid money for. And, I expect the kind of intentionality where, like, if I run into like this kind of dead end and there is not something for me there was no one who thought about this. Like, part of playing a game is that you are interacting with a system that someone built for people like you, right?
So I get offended if someone sends me obvious AI out, like ChatGPT output. I get offended. That's offensive. But at the same time, I also get offended if someone sends me sloppy, grammatically incorrect text that is riddled with spelling errors or punctuation mistakes. I expect perfection. You've got all the tools at your disposal to send something that's unclear. It's difficult to parse out any meaning from. You could have sent this to ChatGPT and had it critique this for clarity, for readability, like you should have. I expect that now. I expect perfection. So I don't give me something that it just output, but give me something that it checked.
As we say in gamer speak, get good.
Right, get good. And like you have no excuse, right? You have no excuse for that.
Right.
And so like I take a point. It's like, hey, look, I paid $70 for this game, and you're sending me, there's AI slop visible in the textures, but in that case, it was like someone found it. And the thing is, going back to this like kind of idea of the theory of fun and MMORPGs, like, well, at some point, you've got to expect that that's the only way that some truly open world game is going to be possible, because otherwise you're getting a 20-year dev cycle, and it's still going to be a constrained thing, right? And actually, that was the other thread I wanted to pull on here, which was GTA 6, right? I read an interesting thought on Twitter the other day, and someone said like GTA 6 is the last pre-AI open world game. And from now on, these games, will have like much shorter dev cycles, much lower costs. I mean, it's a $1 billion game. GTA 6 is a $1 billion game. That's how much it costs to make.
It's insane.
But they recovered that in pre-sales. They recovered that in pre-sales, right? So, but nonetheless, I mean, like I think that's probably true. And my kind of reaction was, great. That means I don't have to wait more than a decade, right, for the next GTA 6. That's fantastic. That's fantastic news.
I think that's true as well. It's like, I want better games sooner. I mean, sure, there are like too many games already, and there will always be too many games, but, can we get better games? That's great. I like that as a game consumer. But what I'm really interested in is, like, as a game researcher and AI researcher, is, can we put runtime AI in here to sort of, because I've had this like idea for a long time about, like, imagine some GTA X, and you're in some place and you basically decided you want to go 4 hours in like that direction, just like randomly choose it. And then it would basically create a new world or like new regions. There's a city there that no one has ever been to before and is created, and it's basically has new architecture, new quest lines, new people, new sort of scenery, whatever, a little bit No Man's Sky like, but it's kind of it fits together. It fits together with storylines from the rest of the world. And maybe some of these challenges in there are like what the game thinks that you may enjoy doing next. It's like elaborations on the kind of quests you like and so on. Will people like it or will people hate it? Because on the one end, it's like, generative AI in game design on steroids. There's literally no human has been involved in creating this new city because it was created right now for you. On the other hand, there's this long tradition of PCG. So roguelikes and so on. I love roguelikes. And a significant stream of my research has been like, how can we make this better? How can we make, more personalized or more controllable or more kind of like better in some version, some variant content generation for like online creation, co-creation in games. I think that's going to be a big thing. And I don't know what people will think about it. I mean, I look forward to it.
Well, I think that sets up my next question really well. Is like, what do you think the optimal AI enabled content generation pipeline looks like? Is there a human in the loop for that reason, that you can't just let this, procedural train completely run away because that might, I don't know, maybe that induces some kind of psychosis or something, or, but then people aren't feeling like they're but also it's like the loss of connectivity with the other experience, the experience that other people are having, right? Like, okay, if I had this totally unique experience, like who do I commiserate with about it, right? Is that the optimal pipeline does include a human in the loop in some way? And these are just kind of like, these are productivity tools. It's not pure play, totally expansive, infinite generation tools. They're productivity tools. They make us faster. They make one person can do the work of 10 people. Or is it really, no, we're going to have these experiences at some point, and that actually is the optimal outcome? I think optimal outcome.
I mean, we all know that games started off. I mean, there's like, for people who are not gamers, which is not us, we're gamers. People who are not gamers tend to look at games and like, oh, it's this thing, this is what games look like. But, games has always been like this super multifaceted and diverse thing. And it's getting even more like this, you look at like what kind of games were released last year and you find like everything. I mean, even if you only look at games that actually got attention, like what's this game where you're like basically unpacking someone's life? Is it called Unpacking or something? And then, you find like walking simulators and RPGs and, grand strategy 4X games and, and like, I don't know how many kind of like bizarre kind of mobile game sort of genres come up there. So I think the future will hold all of this and much more. There will definitely be games that are more or less like they are made like they are done today, mostly with a little bit of like, you probably use Claude or Cursor or something like this to write your code and probably some kind of generative AI tool set. But it's mostly like pattern on game development as today. And then there will be other games where like the design work of the game designers because most game designers are perfectionists, right? They want you to have the illusion of your own agency while they actually have designed all of this ahead of time for you. But there will also be a room for another type of game designer that designs the experience machine, more like that, and basically sets up like tool chains and so on for like things that to change as you are playing the game. Now, the other question you had, I mean, for me, like personally, I think there's so much interesting to do research-wise in like, this kind of more generative tool chain and what does design look like when you sort of jump up an abstraction layer and you kind of never, as a designer, you never touch the actual level or the actual rules for driving or something. You design the rules for how this is going to be automatically designed. Some of it during design time, but much of it at runtime, right? Because that's another thing about like truly open-ended games. I mean, memory is expensive and the world is enormous. And that's always been the case. And there's always going to be the case. There's always going to be more world to model than we can fit into memory in some way. That was true for like Elite. That was true for No Man's Sky. It's true for like, GTA, whatever. So this type of game will have to have some kind of runtime generation going on. The other question we had about like, what about the social aspects of this? It's interesting because it's going to be really different, right? I used to be the kind of person who like, it's funny, when I was working at IT University of Copenhagen, I was sitting right next to T.L. Taylor, who's like a world famous online, so MMO anthropologist. She basically started that whole kind of line of research. And she was going on about how games were always social. And I was like, no, I basically I pull the curtains and then I sort of disconnect my Xbox from Wi-Fi and I sit there and play all on my own. The outside world, I don't communicate with anyone. I'm an asocial gamer. But then she was like, "Oh, do you never read strategy guides?" Well, and I was just like, "Shut up." So basically, I think that in that case, might be about like inviting other people into the world that the game has created for you or that you have co-created with the game.
To your point, it's just up to the designer to make that happen, to figure out what that framework is. Maybe it's sharing, generated worlds, or maybe there's just some sort of new framework for making it social in that same way. It's like, well, I'm playing it and I'm in my own generated environment. No one is ever going to see this the exact same way I saw it, but there's still some other touch point that I have with other people to discuss or to experience, to share the experience. Maybe it's just like some kind of system of trade or something. I don't know. It could be anything, but that's the job now. That's the job, is figuring out the theory of fun, right? How do you connect that to this theory of fun? That's the true primitive, and like the actual format that it takes, or just the visual output is almost like secondary to that. And that just is what the job becomes. But I think I was talking about this the other day. I gave a talk at this event and I was having lunch with the CEO and the chief product officer of this company. And one of the guys, his son is like 17, right? So he's thinking about colleges. And I was saying like, well, I don't envy you. My kids are very young, right? So I don't have to think about this for a while. But I don't know what I would tell my son to study now. And probably it would be just humanities. Like I genuinely don't think I could recommend going to study computer science, which is unfortunate because I love coding. I found it really relaxing. Like I felt like it was so one thing that I've always just found really interesting, and maybe this is it's peculiar to me, but I can't listen to music that has lyrics if I'm writing. It's distracting.
Same. The lyrics in languages I know.
Sure.
I love finding like really aggressive hip hop in languages I don't understand.
I like how you emphasize the aggressive hip hop.
Yeah. It should be like, it should sound like they're threatening you. You're like, I don't understand a word of what you say, but this is awesome.
but when I'm coding, I can. And it's because coding is just rules based, right? It's rules based and things work or they don't. But what isn't is architecture design. And now coding is essentially just architecture design, system design. And that I feel the same way about. I can't have lyrics in the music if I'm actually thinking through the prompt that I'm going to send to Codex or whatever, Claude Code, whatever, because it's distracting. And there's got to be just something less in there in like cognitive load. And whereas I could just sit and churn out code all day because it's just like kind of procedural and I understand the rules. So if the computer scientist of the future, or the systems architect or the game designer of the future really is just mediating systems design only, then what should they be educated in? I think you're just talking about like critical thinking, and I think you're probably just talking about the humanities, like like philosophy, like literature, like how can you read something and truly parse meaning from it? Like that to me feels like the skill set that you need, even if you are working at a tech company building products.
Yeah, my first degree is my bachelor's is technically major in philosophy. I did end up taking a ton of other things, but I wrote my bachelor's thesis in philosophy and minor, so on. And yeah, this is like still the core of what I am, and this is like has shaped my thinking so much. So if my son or daughter, when the time comes, say they want to go study philosophy, I'm like, yeah, great idea. I mean, do take some other classes, Philosophy needs like side dishes to work, but it's like, that's definitely a good idea. The thing about coding, I mean, a cognitive load, I think cognitive load is not a one-dimensional thing. It's like, I think there's so many different ways you can do. I mean, when you draw, drawing or painting is like coding to some extent, right? And I come from a family of like visual artists, so both my parents and a bunch of other people in my family are painters or something around that. And it's so fascinating to see that this is like they often need music to do this. It's like it gets you in that right kind of. You kind of need to occupy some part of your brain while you're doing the rest of the other brain. And I think the same for coding. I also think coding is like the reason why LLMs are so good at coding and reinforcement learning with verifiable rewards have worked so well for that is that coding is a game. And that's also why coding is so fun. I mean, you are playing a game as you're writing this code. And it's like a game with a kind of like classic single player games with clear rewards. Like you're playing, it's like playing Super Mario Bros. Or playing Minesweeper or something like this. And the corollary of this, or one corollary of this, is that it's not clear how well coding skill really transfers to other things that are not like coding. In the same way as like, you know, there's no observable transfer basically between Super Mario Bros. And, you know, chess or StarCraft or something like that, which I think is a perspective on what foundation models know and don't know.
Plenty of mobile growth strategies are still built on broken journeys and incomplete data, and it's costing brands big time. Branch fixes that. It's your AI-powered MMP that unifies your links, measurement, and user experience across every channel to successfully acquire, retain, and engage your app users without wasting spend. Learn more at branch.io. And while you're there, check out Branch's AI Search and Discovery Report, covering insights from more than 300 marketing, growth, and digital leaders on how they're responding to the rise of AI search. Talk to me about the promise of world models. So fundamentally, what do people hope world models accomplish that language models can't? Like when Jan LeCun says, look, we're going to hit a wall with LLMs, world models are like the next big leg of progress. Like what is he talking about? And then relate this to gaming and why is gaming important in that discussion?
World models is a very broad term. It's basically, in a very technical sense, it's in reinforcement learning, it's a transition model, basically. If you are in this state of the world and this action is taken, and then what's the next state of the world going to be? But then, you know, what exactly that means and how you represent that, it varies a lot. What people tend to think of is something like Genie, so Google's Project Genie, essentially a steerable video model. You know, you can code up something, you can prompt up like, hey, I want to play a racing game set in Greenwich Village, New York, and you get something that looks, you know, it looks nice and it plays a little bit like a racing game. It kind of sucks, but and it stops, decoheres after a bit. And, you know, even within the 1 minute you're allowed to play, like, you know, you see that the physics starts behaving and like the sort of the other cars start looking wonkier and stuff like this. But anyway, what's fascinating is that it works at all. It's really interesting. And I mean, I know both you and I and many others have racked our brains among like, what does this mean? And it's not really clear because like when Google sort of went on the big sort of publicity about Project Genie, you know, stocks and game companies tanked. And this was kind of weird. And it's just like some kind of strange overreaction because that's not what it is. It's not a replacement for game creation. It's not a replacement for game engines. It's like it has like lots of disadvantages and few of the advantages of game engines. It's like really hard to edit things. You know, you have to edit it with a prompt, which is like really inexact. You don't have the exact editing you have in a game engine. It's slow. It's hard to predict. You know, it's like it's not deterministic fundamentally, and so on. So basically, it has almost nothing of what game designers value about game engines. But clearly, it is very good at something. You know, what is the something? How can we fit this into the sort of content workflows we can think of? Or how can we think of new content workflows and new types of experiences? It may be that this is, I mean, OpenAI had this Sora video creator for a bit that tried to make a social network. It was fun for a bit, and then it was too limited. You could very well imagine that something like Sora, but interactive experiences, game creation, social networks, where you basically create little games for each other. It's unclear if we have enough, and many people have tried that sort of thing with kind of not world models, but more like, you know, some kind of more traditional kind of game engine-like thing. I think it's fundamentally a good idea. Someone is going to succeed with this, maybe based on a neural game and game engine, maybe based on something else, but it's going to be, someone is going to make something big with this. The other thing is that it's a cool prototyping thing. Like, you know, you can just prompt your way into a weird world you can interact with. It's broken as hell, but then you can basically get ideas that you can remodel in a game engine, or basically have a model look at, like, play through what you created and create a game engine version of it that you can then actually build a game out of. There are probably other things. On a very technical level, you could imagine using this as forward models if you tune a neural game engine on a particular game and then create a very low dimensional version of it that runs really fast. Because an issue with current game engines is that they don't simulate fast enough, so you can't really run planning in them. Maybe you can use neural game engines for that. It's one possibility. But I don't know. It's very fascinating. I don't know where it's going.
Yeah, I think my sense is like the prototyping piece is probably like, and look, I mean, like with a lot of this stuff, you don't want to get anchored to the current capabilities, either of the model or just the carrying capacity of the hardware, because I mean, this stuff changes, too rapidly. But my sense is like the prototyping piece makes a lot of sense, right? Like, I mean, if I want to just render a full environment, and even if it's a minute of gameplay, but just have and then, okay, well, does this work? And then if I want to like scrap all of that and then try something that's like fundamentally different, like you imagine this, like I always kind of return to this idea of like in mobile, you want to test theme, tone, and like environment, right? And setting, right? And so like, well, all three of those things in combination is a pretty heavy lift if I needed to like radically alter all three of those things. Like imagine like photorealistic noir, crime game, or like cartoony Viking battle game. Like all three of those, if it's a totally new game, right? So all those assets changing everything. I mean, that's, if I need to do all that, like now if I could just render those with prompts and see, okay, which of these do I feel like, best captures what I'm trying to do, then okay, at least then I have like I could just in a day, I could test 50 variations of those and just see which one of these best fits my vision. And maybe even test them as ads, right? And then see who clicks on what. That feels like a use case.
Ads, by the way, is the kind of content that is time limited enough that the kind of limited coherence and limited kind of like interactivity of your game engines would actually be really good for ads. If you just manage to basically, the problem here is the size of the training network.
Right.
But that's going to be, someone will figure that one out. So it could be cool. Like you could get a lot of like really personalized, so hyper personalized ads that are generated game world for you that you interact with, and that tries to sell you something.
Yeah. No, I mean, I'm sure we're not too far away from that. Yeah. Julian, this was fantastic. How can people consume more of your wisdom? How can they stay in touch with you?
They just type my last name, Togelius, into their favorite social network or their favorite search engine or their favorite LLM. And it's very useful. It's one of the great things the best thing I was born with is like an almost unique last name. There's only 10 of us in the world. So Togelius, that's me on Twitter /X and everything else.
Oh, wow. And actually, one thing I want to highlight, and I'll link it in the show notes, is like you wrote a really great post, I don't know, a couple months ago about how, you had a productive, successful career in AI research without being an expert in math, right? Without having, done...
No, without knowing any maths. That's what it was.
Okay, without knowing, I didn't want to feel like I was exaggerating, but I actually really appreciated that post because I think a lot of this can be very inaccessible. And I think a lot of people, wrongly so, get turned off from AI completely because they'll take a look at a paper and they're like, I have no idea what that is saying. It's like alien language. And I think the reality is like, I understand why, the default is to just go to the math. But like the reality is I don't think, and people would probably argue with this, but like, I don't think, certainly to read these papers, there's like some math that you need to know. And you could teach that to yourself. Like now maybe to do the most cutting edge research and like quantization, maybe it's different. But like I think to read a lot of this work and to understand it, there's just a lot of reusable. A lot of the math is like it's once you get familiar with it, you just reuse all the time. You go, oh, okay, that's a softmax. I get what that is. And
yeah. A lot of the math in the research paper is just completely gratuitous. It doesn't need to be
right.
There. You can just cut it out and focus on the ideas. The real problem is that a lot of research papers are badly written because a lot of people don't know how to write.
Right.
And we should just, we should demand that they get good at this. But yeah, but it's perfectly fine to just ask them to sort of explain it like you're like 5-year-old or a golden retriever or something.
Julian, thank you so much. I hope you enjoy your weekend. Thank you for slotting me in on a Friday afternoon.
Hey, thank you so much, Eric. And it was great. And enjoy your weekend too.